Okay, you go over and back, left to right, loop de loop, and you pull it tight. All right, there we go. That counts as a knot, right? I have never been very good at tying knots. Whistling and tying knots are two skills I never picked up on the level up tree as I went through life. But this counts, right? Like, okay, this is a very small amount of hockey that I have stored in this rope, but I'll put it away for a rainy day. Okay. All right. So we have discovered a new way to use hockey, a way to store your hockey in the refrigerator for use later if you need to. All right. Last chapter, chapter 1122, Emeth blows his load. All right. Emeth's a big golem iron giant. Inside of him there is a rope that was tied by Joyboy himself that he used to store a tremendous amount of Conquerors hockey. His strongest Conquerors hockey burst was stored in a rope that Emeth then like unfurls, like draws taut, and then giant hockey explosion. It hits the Gorosei. 4 of them get sent back to Marijois. Eam apparently felt that pretty damn bad, like a slap in the face by a million wasps. And he's like, Joyboy hockey, no! So, how does this work? I don't know. You look at me. I don't freaking know. I mean, I could talk about it. I mean, I guess. All right. So, first question. Is the rope a special kind of rope? This is important because if it's more about the rope's magical qualities rather than the hockey's qualities, that could be like there's only this particular rope, kind of like how Vivra cards work. Vivra cards are made out of a very special kind of paper. It's actually mentioned that you take your like toenail or fingernail clippings to a certain shop in the New World, and they take it and they like press it together and they make Vivra card paper, and then that is connected to you. I don't know if it has to be toenail clippings or something. I don't know if like hair will work or you add your blood to it. I don't really know. But so that's the process for making that. And then you have this rope. So it could just be like a normal rope. Maybe when you learn certain secrets of hockey or you get really, really good control over your Conqueror's hockey, you can endow it in certain objects. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be rope. It could be kind of like with Nen, where in Hunter x Hunter, you could set certain conditions with your Nen on objects. Like the Nen will activate if you open this box, or if you use Nen on this piece of string, then something will happen. You can kind of like ready your actions with Nen. In this cases, maybe it's ready in action with hockey. Joyboy is certainly like one of the best, if not the best hockey user in all of the history of One Piece. Like Joyboy might be objectively the most powerful character. Like just stronger than Luffy, stronger than Roger, stronger than Whitebeard, stronger than Garp or Rox or Blackbeard or Akainu or Kaido or Big Mom or anybody notable. Joyboy might stand at the pinnacle among all these characters, okay? Until Luffy puts some training in. I mean, Luffy's not even 20 years old yet. I mean, by the time Luffy's 40, man, he's gonna be even stronger than Joyboy and Roger, probably, right? But yeah, so, I like to actually think it's not the rope specifically. I like to think it is just a feature that Joyboy, when he mastered Conqueror's hockey, he was able to just be like, all right, Emeth, I'm not going to be around forever, so I'm going to take a rope and I'm going to tie it in a knot and I'm going to put my hockey in that knot. And whenever you need my hockey, whenever you need to protect somebody or protect yourself, just unfurl that knot, untie that knot, and I'll come and help you, man. I'll be there for you, like always, right? Now, there are comparisons that make it seem like maybe not necessarily the hockey is what's doing it. It really is the rope. So in Weatheria, when we saw Nami go there and meet Haradis for the first time, Nami was very upset. And so Haradis took out the like little weather rope thing, and it's like tied in 3 different knots. And it's like if you untie 1 knot, it's a gentle breeze. If you untie 2 knots, it's a heavy squall. And if you untie all 3 knots, it's like a giant gale that just blows in and like knocks Nami and like the table over and really served to just piss her off more. So, is there a connection between that weather knot in Sky, not Skypiea, but in Weatheria, which is a sky island, and the hockey knot? Well, I'm going to assume if it is the rope, it's probably an invention of the Ancient Kingdom. because Joyboy was from the Ancient Kingdom, and if the Ancient Kingdom was even more advanced than Egghead, it's not crazy to assume that they made a lot of research and strides in understanding how hockey works. So it's very possible that the people of the Ancient Kingdom developed, like, oh yes, a technique to store your hockey in certain objects. It could just be rope, or it could be like what the rope is made out of is what's doing it. You know, maybe they soaked the rope in a particular kind of substance or resin or something, or you know, maybe it's like Joyboy added his blood to the rope or something, and then you could endow hockey into it. Who knows? But it's an interesting thing, a connection to Weatheria, which is a sky island, because the sky islands are so kind of removed from the rest of the world. Like, there might be stuff up there that might be from the Void Century that the world government hasn't really, you know, covered up because it's so distant, right? So Weatheria is a relatively new location. I mean, compared to the Void Century, Haradis created it with some of his colleagues. Haradis is like 99 years old. He's a pretty old dude. I think he founded it about maybe like 60 years ago or something like that. So Weatheria did not exist during the Void Century, but it is feasible that maybe some technology from the Void Century could have made it up to a sky island, and it was passed around for a while. I mean, like, Weatheria might not have been the only location that used this type of rope, and then over the centuries, eventually, you know, Haradis founds Weatheria, and then, like, he starts to research all this different weather technology, and he discovers, like, from another sky islander or something, like, oh yes, there's this cool rope that you could store wind in, and you untie it. Or it could have, like, absolutely no connection whatsoever. It might just be two completely separate things, and you know, the weather rope and then the hockey rope, and then there's nothing else more to it than that. All right. I am also intrigued by this technique because it is very similar, or at least I find it similar, to the power of the black blades. So we have Shusui right here, which is Ryuma's blade. One of the only two confirmed black blades in the entire One Piece world. The other one being Yoru. And we don't know how to make them is the thing. We don't know how a black blade is exactly forged. You would assume that you just pour a lot of hockey into your weapon over the course of like a long period of time, of maybe like years or even possibly decades, and it eventually becomes a black blade. But even with that explanation, that's kind of hard to believe, because you have like Whitebeard's Naginata Murakumo Giri that he used for years and years of his life. At least a good 40 years of his life he was swinging around Murakumo Giri, and that did not turn into a black blade. Roger had Ace, which when we see Ace, it's not a black blade. They can hockey up these weapons, just like Zoro can hockey up his Wado and turn it temporarily into a black blade, but doesn't stay permanently like that. So it's kind of confusing exactly how one does that. Considering that we're tying a lot of this stuff back to Conquerors, you know, like even look at how Luffy ultimately, well, I guess it wasn't ultimately how he defeated Kaido. He went into Gear 5 to ultimately defeat Kaido, but the same premise still stands, is adding Conquerors hockey onto armament allows you to pretty much punch through like any natural defense. We learned from Law at the beginning of Egghead, you know, if you just exert enough hockey, you can override Devil Fruit abilities and things like that, right? But like that's basically, that is how Zoro defeated King, where Zoro, you know, armament plus Conquerors was able to kind of like cut through even King's really strong defenses here. That's like the ultimate like almighty damage in One Piece, like just covers like everything. So I would imagine that maybe it's only possible to make a black sword once you have not just mastered armament. You can make a temporary black sword when you go armament, but if you master Conquerors, like truly, like on the level of Joyboy, then you can make a black blade. And if that is the case, if we're going along with that logic, which might not be true or not, I'm just spitballing here, if that is the case, then Roger might not have been on that level. Whitebeard might not have been on this level. Once again, just two black blades in the story. Yoru and Shusui. Ryuma was the sword god, so it kind of makes sense that he was able to turn a blade into a black blade, right? Maybe the reason that we haven't seen a lot of black blades in the current story is because the way to make them has been lost to centuries, okay? It was something maybe they knew how to do in the Void Century. Ryuma lived a really long time ago. We don't know how long ago, but at least several centuries back to be sure. So maybe during his time, and also in Wano, when, also the flow of information's a little different, maybe the old ways or the old techniques on how to make a black sword stayed in Wano, where it was forgotten in the rest of the world. So, that's how Ryuma made his blade into a black blade. Do you think it has anything to do with the metal, too? Like the actual metal, like it's made out of? I would assume this Shusui's falling apart. I need to get a new one. I doubt it because, like if that was the case, then the sword is already forged in a particular way, like the Wado Ichimonji. I was like, well, it's not made out of this special material, so sorry, you don't have it as a black blade. It's just never going to happen, right? So that's very possible. And if that is the case, then once again, tying it back to the Void Century, tying it back to Joyboy's homeland, this place that was super technologically advanced and maybe did a bunch of research on, might have been, I was going to say research on devil fruits, but it could have been the origin of devil fruits. Possible they could have existed before the Void Century, but if you just want to tie all this together in a nice little bow by saying, devil fruits were invented during the Void Century, they were created by the Ancient Kingdom, that's possible as well. But they were researching Haki as well, and they figured out how to endow it into metal, into weaponry, okay? And so it's possible that Yoru, Mihawk's weapon, the Saijo Owazamono greatsword, that might have been very well passed down through the centuries from user to user to, like, the strongest swordsman in the world. It could be kind of a situation where maybe Mihawk was like, I will now travel the world, and I will find the strongest swordsman, and Mihawk finds the strongest swordsman in his day, and he had Yoru. And Mihawk defeated him and took it. And it was like, nice, I have the world's greatest sword. This is the blade Yoru, only meant to be wielded by number one, It was his sword, Mr. Krabs. He was number one, right? And it just got passed down all the way back. Dude, that would be wild. If we get a flashback, when we get the flashback to the Void Century, and a lot of people have been comparing, like, Joyboy to Luffy and his crew. So, like, Emeth was the Frankie of the Joyboy crew, Zunisha was the Chopper, Toki was the Nami, or maybe the Robin of the group, like it's a parallel thing going on here. What if the Zoro of Joyboy's crew, the swordsman of Joyboy's crew, wielded Yoru? He was the original wielder, the one that forged it, and he had it, and it just been passed down through 800 years, much in the same way that the Shodai Katetsu, wielded by Ethan, Bear, and Venus Juro, was a weapon that was most likely forged during the Void, and, Ethan still has it now, so it still exists, and it's still, like, in pretty good condition if you take care of it, right? That'd be pretty interesting. And then we can find out that, like, storing your Haki in a knot or storing it on a weapon, it's just lost to time. However, we have Egghead, and we also are going to Elbaf next. Elbaf is another place filled with a lot of magic and things, like, not magic necessarily, but, like, a lot of, might be, honestly, like, in Norse mythology, Odin has a lot of really cool magical gear in his vault, so there might be some stuff there, but, Saul is there, and Saul has the collective research of all of Ohara, and then also there might just be information the giants know, like Odin, Thor, Loki, maybe they might know some way in order to endow weapons with Haki, and it's a technique that has been lost, or it's a technique that maybe is really difficult to pull off. Maybe somebody has to die in order for it to happen. I don't know how this works, right? All I'm saying is Ryuma's dead and his blade is a black blade. And I don't think if Mihawk is not the original user of Yoru, maybe the previous user died and that's why it's a black blade. Might have something to do with that, right? So yeah. Even if you want to say that the rope that Joyboy used with Emeth and the Haki bomb and everything like that, even if you want to say that's a special kind of rope and it can only be done in this way, there is no other way to store Haki other than by tying it in a rope for a long period of time, right? Okay, well, even in that regard, Joyboy might have some other Haki ropes out there. Not just Joyboy, but maybe Eam, maybe some other characters from the Void Century. They tied their Haki together. Some other denizens from the Ancient Kingdom have it. And then out there in the world somewhere, that's, there's like knots tied everywhere. It's like everyone's like, oh, what's this random rope on a ruin in the middle of the jungle? What is this? Giant burst of Haki. I also want to bring up, this is important too, that giant burst of Haki did not really seem to affect Luffy or the Giants or the Straw Hats, okay? And I bring this up because when Emeth was untying the knot, so to speak, it was Joyboy's Haki that did the impact. It wasn't Emeth, Okay, Emeth was not the one. I mean, he chose to untie the knot, but it was Joyboy's Haki. So how did the Haki know to, like, I will only affect, the Marines and the Gorosei and all of the people that are around them. Like, it's almost like, so was it just Joyboy's Haki and Joyboy's intention? Or did Emeth have some control over that too, where Emeth is like, I do not want to harm Luffy. He has the power of Joyboy, and he's reminding me of a happier time. He is friend. I will not harm him. And then the Haki just, like, resonated with that, maybe, because Joyboy and Emeth had that connection. And so it's like, it's only the people that, Emeth intended to harm with the Haki that were affected by it, right? And then the Vice Admirals were able to endure it too. They didn't pass out from it either. But yeah, interesting that, like, so if it's like the overall will, like, I can understand that Luffy would not be affected by this, because Luffy literally shares the same devil fruit as Joyboy, Will of D, and if you want to say he's like, carries on the will. Oh, that's another important thing too. I'll get back to that in a moment. I want to finish this thought first. It makes sense that Luffy wouldn't have been affected, but all the other people, like the Giants, were unaffected. Okay, that maybe makes sense. Joyboy might have had some connection to the Giants, especially if Joyboy was like a Buccaneer. The other Straw Hats weren't affected by that. Like Usopp wasn't affected. Like, how did the Haki know to not target them but everybody else? Very, very interesting note. So the other thing I wanted to bring up is an overall theme in One Piece that has been from, like, day one, and it's even represented in when Shanks hands the Straw Hat to Luffy, is the inherited will. The idea of, like, oh, this is my will, I'm passing it on to you, you will carry on the flame, as it were, okay? Like, don't let the flame die out sort of thing, right? So sometimes it's just purely metaphorical, right? Just, like, pass down the, like for example, in the case with, like, Saul, like Saul, even though he didn't really intend to, kind of carries on the will of Ohara, all right? Like, he wasn't originally planning on doing anything like that, but he just kind of ended up, like, in that position, right? And sometimes it's more physical. Sometimes it's like Luffy's hat literally being passed down from, like, Roger to Shanks to Luffy, right? And in this case, we have a literal physical, I guess, interpretation of it in the sense of this rope that literally carries on the inherited will from the Void Century, with Joyboy passing that down through the centuries, okay? So, I like that if, like, Oda's going for a little idea there that, like, the past is beginning to break through to the present a little bit, and we saw Emeth's very sad finale there where he powers down, presumably for the final time, and he just dreams of the happy memories of Joyboy and all of his friends, and then he's gone, right? And Saturn is still on the island, and Saturn doesn't look like he's dead or anything. Saturn's not, like, on the ground bleeding out, like, oh. So I think if they have any means to, they're probably going to dismantle Emeth completely. So he might be truly gone forever, but we'll probably see more of him. We'll definitely see more of him during the flashbacks and stuff. So don't worry about Emeth. I think we'll see him again in a very tearful backstory that'll connect all the dots on that one, right? So yeah, but until then, are the Straw Hats going to learn how to do this Haki storage technique on Elbaf or something? I think it's really high time the Straw Hats buckle down and learn Haki. Like, even if you just want to have a moment at Elbaf where it's like, you guys should really know some Haki here, okay? And you know what? At this point in the story, at the level the Straw Hats are at, I don't even think you need to do a big training arc, okay? So let's go down the roster really quick. Out of the 10 Straw Hats, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei primarily use Haki to fight. Okay, they already know it. They're good with observation and armament. Usopp knows observation. We really haven't seen him use that since Dressrosa. He used it in that one instance where, like, that was, like, the first time he awakened it, and he shot the, the special star, and it knocked out Sugar, and then Luffy and Law were saved, and that was, like, the only time that it was directly shown that, like, Usopp knows Haki. All right, cool. And then all the other Straw Hats never really brought up or referenced. You could maybe make an argument with Robin when she goes into Demonio. There was that chapter a few ago where Sanji and Frankie and Bonnie all use the combination attack with Luffy to defeat Mars, and they hit Luffy, and Luffy's like, it hurts, you guys are using Haki. And it kind of brings up a question, like, Bonnie is confirmed to use armament, Sanji can use armament, was Frankie using armament Haki too? uh, you know, like it's a question. But as for the rest, you know, never really mentioned. Like it's never mentioned. Like, I mean, once again, you could look at it like Nami's always been very perceptive with the weather. So you could say observation. Nami is like the only one to physically injure Luffy. Like whenever he's being an idiot, Nami smacks him in the face and he has a big whelp on his head. He's like, Nami, why'd you do that? It's like, oh, Nami has Conquerors armament haki. Okay, fine, whatever. I mean, you can make references about that kind of stuff, right? Brooke has never really been shown to use it. Up until a few chapters ago, it was never mentioned Frankie could use it, right? Chopper never mentioned to really use it. I guess you could argue he's an animal. He's more in tune with nature. Maybe he has observation with some of his techniques like scope or something like that, right? But it's just never been directly referenced like, Robin, you're using armament. Nami, you're using observation. Like, never directly referenced, right? So if we get to Elbaf, and I'm honest, like, if we have, like, a couple of chapters where the Giants are like, you know what, guys, you should pretty much be able to use Haki at this point. Like, you don't even need a big training arc. Maybe, like, a couple of days would be giving you enough of a crash course on how strong the Straw Hats are. For Usopp to really get a handle on observation, he's already been good at that from the beginning. It wouldn't take very long. If you want to say Nami and Chopper are good at observation Haki, fine. If you want to see Frankie and Brooke and Robin are like, you guys should really be able to focus on armament. And at the end of Elbaf, if all of the Straw Hats come out of that arc being stronger and knowing Haki, I wouldn't think that that's a cop-out. I really wouldn't think that that's like, oh, they all have the same powers now. Because Haki has always been mentioned, like anybody can learn it. Anybody, even random Marine soldiers that are just like, here's random Lieutenant Dan. I can use Haki. It's just like there's random Marines that can use it. It's not like a Devil Fruit ability. Now with Conquerors, that's different. You have to have the disposition of a king, so that's a little unique. But just for like the Straw Hats to all learn observation or armament, that should not come as a shocker to anyone, and that should be perfectly fine going into the next battles they're going to be getting into, right? So I think I think this is the time. I think it's the time we buckle down and the Straw Hats learn some Haki at Elbaf. Who's with me? I'm assuming a few people shouted, but let's do it again. Who's with me? Yeah! All right. Anyway, that's the video. I don't know if I added anything to this or not, but later. Have a good one, everybody. Okay. Go over and under, left to right.